Hi everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Just Good Games. So it hasn't been a video in a while, and that's because I've had a new job and it's been difficult trying to figure out when and how to do videos, but I'm back on it now and I am doing a video which I've been wanting to do for a long time, and that is a tier list of all the main Zelda games. I'm really looking forward to doing this. In case you haven't done a tier list before, what you do is you take specific things on the which are in a category and you put them in tiers. We've got D, C, B, A and S here, and they are all the main Zelda games. I've played most of these, and if I haven't played them, I'm still watch videos and stuff on them, so I am going to be putting them all in a tier list. Just before we get to it, I would like you to do one thing, and that is go down there and hit that subscribe button, please. So let's crack on with the Zelda games. I'd also like to add before we get into this that the D tier on a Zelda tier list is still quite high quality. Zelda just has like a higher bar than other games. So if I put something in B or C, they're not like normal B or C games. They're pretty much like still top quality games. So let's just crack on, and let's crack on with The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Now this one I believe was on the Nintendo 3DS, because the whole point of it was the 3DS function allowed Link to go flat, and then he would pass through a 2D world, and then it would also transition to 3D once you got back. I believe that was the gimmick, and this, like many 2D handheld Zelda games, has a very similar story to most of them, and very similar gameplay, with usually a gimmick added onto it to make it different. And in this case, the gimmick, as I said, was the 2D to 3D. And I'm just going to stick this one on a C tier for now. These can move up and down as we go, but I think that's okay. It might move up to B depending on where I put the other sort of more handheld Zelda games. Next we have The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. And A Link to the Past, I believe, is the third Legend of Zelda game, and it took everything which was good about Legend of Zelda 1 and Legend of Zelda 2 and turned that up a notch. And ooh, where do I put this? I don't think there was any ridiculous gimmick in this one. I just think it was like a culmination of the first two Zelda games. I'm going to stick this in the B tier, as it is for its day a very good Zelda game, but still not on the top level. Next we have Legend of Zelda, and I can't see, I'm just going to have a look in there, because that's Four Swords. I don't know what this one is. It was on the GameCube. I think, oh, got it. It is the sort of remake or reimagined version of Four Swords on the GameCube. As you can see next to me, there's Four Swords, the handheld version, which I believe was on the Game Boy Advance. I'm going to do these like almost together, and I think they deserve to go on the C tier. I'm actually going to move the GameCube one up a bit better, as I enjoyed that one a bit more. Next up we have Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Right, so I'm going to cheat a little bit on this one, and I'm going to do it as Link's Awakening, the remade version on the Nintendo Switch, as I've not played the original, but I've played that version. So treat this as the new remade version, and that is going straight in the A tier, because the remake is one of the best remakes ever. I really enjoyed it. I hadn't played a 2D Zelda game in a long time, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I like that the story's a bit different as well. These are minor spoilers for stuff that you collect the instruments to create the song, and the Song of Awakening, I think it is. It's probably called something else, but I just really enjoyed that game. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I believe the next one, I don't even have to zoom in to read that, the writing's so small, but I can tell from the cover that this is Ocarina of Time. And I just think it would be sacrilegious to not put Ocarina of Time in the S tier. Ocarina of Time is heralded as one of the best games of all time, one of the best Zelda games. It is absolutely fantastic. It is the first Zelda game I ever played. I remember waking up Christmas Day 97 or 98, getting a Nintendo 64 with Super Mario 64 and Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. What a double take of games, just superb. But what more can I say about Ocarina of Time which hasn't been said? It is just the bar which a lot of Zelda games are judged by, maybe up until a recent point, but we'll get there. Next up we have Zelda, and I believe it's Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, and these were, I think, on the Game Boy Advance, and you needed to complete both to get the proper ending. So again, I'm going to do these together like I did for Swords, but these are almost, I don't know if they're exactly the same game, but they probably are very, very similar. And these are going to go on the C tier. Next, coming up, we have Phantom Hourglass, which is a sort of spin-off from Wind Waker, which was on the Nintendo DS, and you'd use the stylus to draw things. Like, you had the hourglass, and you would have to draw the hourglass in specific configurations to activate things. And I actually really enjoyed this game. One of the major problems with it is you had to keep going back to the same dungeon. You would go to some place, find a new skill, do the same dungeon again, get a bit further in that, and then you'd have to keep going backwards and forth, and that got a bit tedious. But I remember this being very, very enjoyable, and I'm going to put this on the B tier. Oh, here we go. Next up we have Legend of Zelda, one of the ones I've played most recently because I replayed the remake, and the name has completely, Skyward Sword, the name had completely jumped out of my head. Skyward Sword is a good Zelda game. What have I got on the A tier at the moment? Link's Awakening. It's the end of probably the era of Zelda which we know, the dungeon crawling Zelda, as Breath of the Wild has taken it into a completely different direction. That was definitely needed. I have a video talking about that on the channel if you want to check that out. But Skyward Sword is very good. I just got a bit bored of it because I got bored of the Zelda formula by that point, which I never thought I'd ever get bored of. But I'd still say it's an A tier Zelda game. We're gonna move that. No, I can't be honest. We'll move that down and put that up there. Next we have Spirit Tracks, which is the second spin-off from the sort of style of Wind Waker. It falls in the Wind Waker timeline. If you want to go into your Zelda timelines, that is another video for another day, but it is in the Wind Waker timeline, and it's good. I think it improves upon Phantom Hourglass, but maybe not enough to push it up a tier. It's very similar to Phantom Hourglass. This one takes place on the train, if you didn't guess that already from the title, Spirit Tracks. I think sitting it on the B tier is about right. Next up, we have the Legend of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. And this, like, the first three Zelda games came out pretty quickly after each other, and they just improved. They're quite similar games, but they improved upon a formula laid down, which went on to obviously make the new 3D Zelda games. And I think Legend of Zelda 2 should go on the C tier, but top of the C tier. Actually, no, that is about right, because it improved upon the original. And while we're at it, I am just going to stick the first Legend of Zelda game in there, because they're very basic nowadays, and I think they're available on the Nintendo Switch's online store thing, like on their sort of SNES emulator, NES emulator thing. I think it's the NES emulator thing. And I played it recently, and it's cool, but it's very, very basic compared to what comes afterwards. But you still have to appreciate the OGs. Next we have Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, which is arguably my favourite Zelda game, arguably. And it obviously received a lot of backlash when it first came out because of the cel-shaded graphics, but it stands the test of time. And I'm putting Wind Waker on the S tier. I don't care what anyone says about it. Wind Waker is one of the best Zelda games. I got it in like that golden packaging, and it came with a new version or an updated version of Ocarina of Time and it was like the Master Edition of Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. But more back onto Wind Waker. Wind Waker is fantastic. The bosses are really good. The dungeons hold up. The worst bit of the game is probably at the start, which is sneaking around Forsaken Fortress. But after that, it just kicks on. It kicks ass. It is a really, really good Zelda game, and that's why it's in the S tier. Next up, we have Triforce Heroes, which is a bit like Four Swords, where you've got to have like multiple links working together to do various tasks and solve various puzzles. It's a very basic Zelda game, but it's really, really fun, and I think it deserves to actually go on B or C. We're gonna go on B. We're gonna go on B for Triforce Heroes. I actually really like Triforce Heroes. It goes on the B. Here we go. This will be the most probably controversial pick of the entire thing, as some people don't like Twilight Princess for its like darker tone, and it's quite a long game, but I really like Twilight Princess. I think it's got one of the best links and best Zeldas. I think it builds upon, like, it's almost like a sequel to Ocarina of Time, but it's not a sequel to Ocarina of Time, but it still feels like it's continuing that Ocarina of Time vibe. The wolf sections are really cool. Ganondorf is very good on it. I think it has the best final boss battle of any Zelda game. I think the battle at the end against Ganon and Ganondorf is really, really good. And except for maybe Wind Waker. Wind Waker is a really good one, but this deserves to go on the S tier for me. I reckon there'll be some people put it on the A tier, but I really, really love Twilight Princess. I think it's fantastic. And here we go, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Completely changed the Zelda formula, and everyone loves it. It's one of the landmark games of the past 10 years. It is absolutely fantastic, and it's obviously inspired not by the Souls games, because the Souls games took inspiration from Zelda, and then Zelda took inspiration from the Souls games, and then Elden Ring took an inspiration. You know what I mean? It's a cycle. But Breath of the Wild, the freedom, it's just so good. What more can I say about Breath of the Wild, which hasn't been said over the past 5 to 10 years? I believe, though, it's not the best Zelda game, but it's still, I wouldn't put it at the top of Zelda games. I really, really love it, and it is in the S tier. But I would actually, like, if this was an order, I would actually put it below Twilight Princess. I know people are going to hate that, but I just think them three, the Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, are almost my holy trinity of Zelda games, because I just love them from playing them when I was a bit younger, and that's probably why nostalgia goggles hit. Next up, and ultimately, we have Minish Cap, and the gimmick on this 2D Zelda is you shrink down, and you shrink and go up and enlarge because of the cap. And it's a cool one. It was on the Game Boy Advance, I think, and this, again, for most 2D Zelda titles, is going to sit in the B tier, as I think the gimmick was good enough to elevate it. And finally, we have Majora's Mask, which I played as a kid, and it messed me up. 1, the moon, really scary. 2, going from Ocarina, where you can take your time and actually learn through the puzzles and being younger. You can't do that in Majora's Mask, because you got 3 days to do it, and the gimmick is so cool. And I did finish it, but I want to go back and play it again once it appears on the Switch store, or that online Nintendo 64 emulator thing on the Switch. I might have to go back and play it. But Majora's Mask, a lot of people say this is the best Zelda game, and some people say it's better than Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild. I'm going to disagree with you there, but I still think it goes into the S tier. It's quality. So there we have it. We made it to the end of the tier list. and I'm just going to go through it. We have Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, Four Swords on the Game Boy Advance, or Color, I can't remember. Legend of Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link, The Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds. Yes, it is A Link Between Worlds. The Legend of Zelda, The Minish Cap in the B tier. Triforce Heroes, Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, not Triforce Heroes, the 4-1, which I've said before, Four Swords, but on the GameCube. A Link to the Past, that's the B tier. The A tier is The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, and Skyward Swords. And then the S tier, the God tier of Zelda games, is Majora's Mask, Breath of the Wild, Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, and of course Ocarina of Time. And thank you for watching the video, thank you for making it to the end. You just need to go down there now, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video everywhere, follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And thank you once again for making it to the end, and thank you for watching Just Good Games.